everybody, in this video what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce the distinction between simple and compound statements. So we've already spent some time talking about what statements are when we're talking about arguments and stuff like that. We'll go into how they can be divided up into simple and compound, and this will get us started talking about how to do formal logic. Let's get into it.
So we talked about what statements are. A statement is anything that can be either true or false. It has truth value, so things like commands are not statements, questions are not statements, proposals are not statements, and also gibberish are not statements, because they are things that we can utter or write down that are neither true nor false. So what would be an example of something that would be a simple statement? Well, let's talk about the notion of a statement. So when we're talking about the structure of a statement, and this is true regardless of language, but we'll take a look at English here. It's something like, today is Wednesday. All right, so let's say that's the case. And this is a statement because I'm going to just label it S1 for the sake of having this here. So today is Wednesday. This is a simple statement, but first let's get to why it's a statement. It's got a subject. So right here, this is the subject of the sentence, and now that it's about. It's got a verb right here, and then here it's got a predicate. So what does that mean here? What the sentence is about, the verb, what it's doing, today is. And I could stop there, but the predicate here adds back to the noun. It tells me more about the subject of the sentence. So today is Wednesday. Now, every statement will at least have that. So just something by itself. Like if I just say the word no, that is not really a statement with any kind of truth value to it or anything like that. So what that means is a statement is something where it has one truth referent. So something like this. Here's what I would do with this, and what I want you to be able to do on quiz 2 is, this is a statement. What I want you to be able to do is to represent it formally. And what I mean by that is here, we're going to basically shrink this down into something that stands for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to arbitrarily underline a word. There are 3, and I'm just going to pick one. Okay. I chose to do the W there. I could have done the today or the is. And what we're going to do is we're going to say, here's how we can represent a statement formally. We're going to take the first letter of the underlined word, and that's going to stand for the entire statement. So if I say today is Wednesday, the first letter of the underlined word is W here. So I'm going to write here, how do I represent this formally? So here's the statement. What's going to be the formula for it? And I'm just labeling these here. We're going to say, you can represent this by just saying W. So what does W stand for? It stands for today is Wednesday. Why? Because I said so. I could have chosen a different letter. I could have underlined today, and we would have chosen T. So it doesn't, and this W doesn't stand for the word Wednesday. It stands for the statement, today is Wednesday, which is a little bit different. So this is a simple statement because there's only one element here. As soon as we start bringing in other elements, it's no longer a simple statement. It ends up being compound. So compound statements are where we have bundles of simple statements. So let's look at an example of that. So we've got this still. Today is Wednesday. Now look what I'm going to add a little bit to it. Today is Wednesday, and tomorrow is Thursday. Okay, so this is an example now of a compound statement, and it's compound because it's got this thing going on right here. This is a connective. This is something joining 2 statements together. So this thing going on right here, today is Wednesday, it's its own thing. It's got its own subject, verb, predicate. Subject there, today, verb is, predicate Wednesday. But what I'm going to do is that part's going to stay the same. W is still going to stand for today is Wednesday. But then we have this, and what this is a connective. So I'm going to have W and whatever that means, then whatever this is. Now this is tomorrow is Thursday. This is its own separate statement. I could have this by itself. So I'm just going to arbitrarily underline Thursday here. So the statement tomorrow is Thursday is going to be represented by just the letter T, because that's the first letter in the underlined word that I've selected. So this statement here can be represented by the formula W and T. Now, there's actually a formula for what this should look like. Okay, so when we get into formal logic, the symbol for and that I'm going to use is a dot like this. So what does the dot means and vice versa? So the way I could represent this whole thing as a formula is this. W dot T. So this is our fully functioning formula there. I'll call it that. So what is W dot T? What does it mean? Today's Wednesday, and tomorrow is Thursday. Now, I could also just have this by itself if I wanted to. What would that mean? In this context, today is Wednesday. What would this mean in this context, just by itself? Tomorrow is Thursday. But what I wrote here, and notice there's a period on the end, so I keep formalizing until I get there. That means that's a stop. When you get to the period at the end, that means you can stop. But so this says, today is Wednesday and tomorrow is Thursday, with the variables that I've been given. So this means, again, a statement like just W by itself. Like if I had just this W by itself, okay, that would be a simple statement. If I had just this T by itself, that's a simple statement. As soon as we have like a symbol, not a letter like this variable here representing a statement, but a symbol that does something to fuse two or more together. And there's one exception where something is just modified. We'll talk about those. So any kind of modifier that goes where it goes from being just a simple one little statement by itself, or formally one little letter by itself, anything that modifies that makes it into a compound statement. So what I'm going to do now here in a moment is we're going to get into the different ways you can connect statements together. So there are a couple of different species of that. Let's get into that. So here's the next thing to know about formal logic is all compound statements need to be dyadic. Now again, the negation is kind of a slight exception to this, at least when so what I mean by that is this is technically simple. This is technically compound, even though there's only kind of one variable or letter involved here. But for all the others, for the arrow, for the dot, for the wedge, for the sniper sight, for all of these, okay, the if then, and also a double arrow as well. Let me stick it up there. For all these, you can have if A then B. This would be A and B. This would be A or B. This would be A X or B. This is A if and only if B. Okay, and I'll put those up there again. So this is what that arrow means is if then. What that dot means is and. What that wedge there means is or, and what that sniper sight means is like what I call X or. It's an exclusive or. Like pick one or the other, and then this one here, sometimes this is abbreviated in math, if and only if. If. The deal is with these are all what are called dyadic. So all formal statements of logic require them to be dyadic. Now here that's pretty easy. All that means by dyadic, by the way, dyadic is just a dyad is just a fancy word for two. So when you're saying dyadic, literally it means two-ish. That's all that it means. So here we have these dyads. So here, for example, the A, that's the left side. Left side, we got the right side. Boom. Two sides, it's a dyad. Okay, so all these are dyadic. That means they require a left side and a right. And we'll see we've got that here for both. We have a left side and right side. Here, this one's got a left side and a right side, left side and a right side, left side and a right side, left side and a right side. So these are all dyadic. They're good. And what do I mean by, how could it be otherwise? Well, look, if I put A arrow, and then there's nothing over here but emptiness, this is not dyadic. Okay, this is wrong. So you can't say if A, then, and then nothing. Okay, so like if today's Wednesday, that's not a statement that you can use. And in fact, being dyadic is part of what we call being a well-formed formula. All right, or for short, WFF. So just like in math, in logic 2, we got to put things the right way. So basically, you can't have like neither can you have like an arrow over here just floating and maybe put a letter on top of it or something. No, you got to put it together correctly. And so what I mean by correctly there is that if it's any one of these, arrows, dots, wedges, sniper sights, or double arrows. It's got to have something on the left side and the right side. It's got to have both. It's got to have a left and a right. That's what I mean by dyadic, and this makes it a well-formed formula. There's other aspects of it's just a well-formed formula. All that means, you probably heard it in other kinds of math before, but all that means is just putting something in the most efficient way possible. So, like, what I mean by that is, let's say, hey, write the number 5 up here. And I went, okay, 5 is 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 over 1. Is this 5? Yes, it is. Should you write it that way? No, don't do that. You're being obtuse. So if I say, hey, write 5, here you go. If you're going to get really spicy, I guess you could write a Roman numeral. So all three of these things here, these all are equal to each other. This means 5, this means 5, this means 5. But when we say, like, we want a well-formed formula, like, there's a certain sense in which this is correct, but you're putting too much work into it. Okay? It's not as simple as it could be. So all that it means for something to be well-formed is it to be simple in this sense of it, you don't put it in an overly complex way, 1. And 2, that it's packaged the right way. It's the formula has the right kind of structure, like being dyadic. That's all that means.
Okay, so this was an introduction into formalizing statements. What we're going to do from here is we're going to continue working on how to formalize, dealing with primarily the notion of conditionals. Those are if-then statements. See you next time.